If you like horror, hit that notification bell, smash that like button, and push that subscribe button now.
What's the boogeyman?
Welcome to my nightmare. We want the man who did this.
Welcome to Nick Push's Horror Channel.
Hey, what's up, everybody? We're reviewing Friday the 13th, Part 2 tonight. You guys hear that? Bud, is that you? Bud? Sounds like there's somebody in this fucking room. Bud? Hey, what's up, everybody? Talking Friday the 13th, Part 2 tonight. Thanks for joining me. Man, this is a fun movie. It's an interesting movie, too, because, as much as, this is a sequel, it's almost kind of a little bit like a reimagining or a reboot. This is what started, the franchise into the franchise we know today. But there's still a lot of semblance of, things that you don't recognize. Like, obviously, the most obvious one is, Jason doesn't have his hockey mask yet. That comes next movie. But once this movie gets going, after the title sequence, we're going to talk about the pre-title sequence in a minute here. Once this movie gets going, bam, it is just nonstop. The pace of this movie is just fantastic. So I got a lot to say about this movie. We're going to stick with the formula I got going here. I don't want to do a lot of bullshit tonight. I just kind of want to get into it. Much like after Alice's intro, this movie just kind of gets into it. So right off the bat, let's talk about the characters here. So I said last week with the original Friday the 13th that the characters didn't bother me. I thought they were perfectly adequate. I thought they were perfectly fine, which is a lot more that you get than you can say with some of the later sequels, right? With this movie, they raised it up a notch as far as characters. These feel like real kids in the woods. They feel like real counselors or, about to be counselors. And you really care about, most of these characters. You got, standouts, obviously, Ginny. We're going to talk about a lot of Ginny tonight. It's Amy Steele's birthday, by the way. Just a little coincidence here that I happen to be doing this, and it happened to be, Amy Steele's birthday. So pretty cool. But yeah, the characters in this movie. You got Ginny, who, like I said, we'll talk about her at length in a moment. You got Paul Holt, who is basically, I don't want to say the new Steve Christy, but he is the new and improved, much improved Steve Christy. I like Paul a lot, and we're going to be talking about this scene I got up here in a little bit. You got Mark, who is in a wheelchair, who's a very likable character, who has a very memorable death scene. You got Vicky, who kind of has a crush on Mark. You got Terry, who is the I don't want to call her because she's not the slut of the movie. Usually like they have a hot chick in these movies that's a slut. Terry's not a slut. She's essentially getting sexually harassed by I can't even remember the guy's name. But one of the other characters, is it Steve? Maybe is it Steve? I can't remember. But he's even he's not a horrible character. He's just kind of a weirdo. And then you got Ted, which we'll fucking talk about Ted too in a minute here. But the characters here are absolutely incredible. They're really stepped it up a notch in this movie. And for me, as far as Friday the 13th movies go, this is, right at the top or second from the top probably as far as characters in this movie go. let's get right into it, guys. Let's talk about our criteria I got here. We got our MVP, our LVP, best scene. You guys can read it down there. I'm not going to waste time explaining what they are. If you don't know what they are, well, you'll figure it out. Okay, let's get right into the MVP of this movie. For me, the MVP of this movie is easy, and it's the birthday girl. It's Amy Steele. Amy Steele, Ginny Field, is far and away the MVP of this movie for me. Not only is she, in my opinion, the best final girl in the Friday franchise for a number of reasons, which we'll get into, but she's one of the best final girls of all time, and she's just not talked about very much. I don't know if it's because, she wasn't in the first one. When you hear final girls, you obviously think of, Laurie Strode, right? For good reason. You think of Sidney Prescott for good reason. You think of Nancy Thompson, also for good reason. They are all in the original movies. But Amy Steele, Ginny Field, she's in the second movie, and it's her only appearance. But she steals the show here. Not only is she very likable and down to earth, we find out how smart she is. She uses her studies in child psychology to ultimately defeat Jason, which we're going to talk about that scene at length in a little while. But she does all that. She's also got some sass to her. Our first appearance, or her first appearance, the first time we see her, she shows up late during Paul's, interesting speech to the counselors. And right off the bat, she's throwing sass his way. Paul says, I was worried about you, Ginny. And, she's like, bullshit, Paul. Bullshit. So she's calling him out on his bullshit right off the bat. So for me, Amy Steele, and we're going to kind of talk about her throughout this stream tonight because she's in a lot of these categories. So we're definitely going to be talking more about her. But for me, Ginny is easily the MVP of this movie. And like I said, it happens to be Amy Steele's birthday today. So happy birthday, Amy Steele. You were fantastic in this movie. And I really liked that it was kind of a different character than Alice. And Alice was fine. Alice was fine. But much like the other characters, the final girl in this, just stepped it up a notch in this movie, which is something you don't really get to say about too many sequels. So let's see who's in the chat tonight, guys. James Morant is here. What's up, James? He says one of the best sequels. Ronnie is also here. Ronnie says the best sequel. Carlos Sandoval. Hey, Carlos, how you doing? Just saw this yesterday and came to the conclusion that each movie is different. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about the Friday franchise, and we'll get into it as I keep going through this review series. But as much as each movie is, Jason or Mrs. Voorhees or Roy, in the woods most of the time, stalking teenagers, whether it's counselors, whether it's people on vacations, as much as, it is the same formula, the cast of characters is what makes each of these movies different. When you got a great cast of characters, you usually have a great Friday movie. Some of the weaker Friday movies, their characters are not that great. And that's not a coincidence because, you have to care about these characters. You have to care about what happens to them, right? I think a lot of modern horror movies get this wrong. One thing I've seen in a lot of modern horror movies, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but one thing I've seen is there's, 8 characters and 5 of them are assholes and 3 of them are bitches. And you're cheering for them to die. And yes, in some respect, you want to cheer for these characters to die, but you have to care about them. Little character moments in slasher movies matter. So little conversations between Ginny and Paul, they matter. Whether it's, in a cabin, whether it's at the bar, they matter. So yeah, Ginny is awesome. And I'm with you, Carlos. Each of these movies, as much as they are the same, they are also very different. Shape of Horror Podcast is here. He says, Bud says Amy Steele is the MVP, so he agrees with me. James Morant says, Ginny, no question, my second favorite Friday final girl behind Tina in part 7. Oh yeah, I can't wait to talk about Tina in 5 weeks. That'll put us into July? Shit. That'll be May. So it'll be June. No, mid-June. 0 to 14th. That's Joe. Hey, Joe. How are you, man? It says Nancy Thompson is the GOAT of Final Girls, but Ginny is right up there at the top. Yeah, I won't argue with that. Nancy's awesome. And Ginny, deserves to be in that same sentence with her. I absolutely agree. Carlos says Alice died because the actress had a stalker in real life. Yeah, she unfortunately did have a stalker, and the stalker, kind of worked his way into her life where she trusted him and was actually telling him about the person that's stalking her. Very scary stuff. And stalking was not taken seriously at all. It's probably not taken as seriously as it should be now. But essentially, especially, I should say, in the early 80s, stalking, it was tough to get someone to take it seriously. So I really feel for her. Entertainment Wizard, what's up, my man? Says Ginny is the top Final Girl. Yep, absolutely agree. Ronnie says Ted is the MVP. Lanky Bastard is the only geek character to live. Yeah, we're going to talk about Ted. And Carlos says stereotypes are fun. Yeah, stereotypes are fun. As long as they're done in a tasteful manner, and you're not making fun of, that person, or, as long as it's kind of done with a tongue in cheek, I think they're fun as well. So, Ronnie brought up Ted. Let's get to the LVP. It's not Ted, I'll tell you that. But it's Ted's parents. Look at this. Let me take Ginny off here for a second. Let's talk about Ted for a second. Ted's parents for me are the LVP. Why? Because the fact that two people procreated and made this is an abomination. So, I'm not trying to be mean, guys. I'm really not. I'm kind of being a little bit facetious here. But this motherfucker's ugly as shit. Okay? So, because he looks like that, he had to develop a personality, right? But he developed a shitty personality where he's just, ridiculous. Yeah, there's a scene, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, where he jumps out by the campfire and he's got this horrible mask on. I'm telling you, it'd be scarier if he didn't have that fucking mask on. This guy, not only is he lanky, and I got nothing against lanky people because I am a lanky bastard myself. Okay? Absolutely. But this guy's got to be one of the ugliest characters in cinema. He's right up there with Courtney Gaines. I think Courtney Gaines is probably uglier, but Ted bothers me, especially because the scene at the bar, guys, he's flirting with this bartender, and it's like, really, man, you have the confidence to do that? I respect the hell out of that confidence, but my God, that scene at the beginning where his prank, and don't get me wrong, it's not as bad as Shelley pranks, but his prank is to have their car towed. Come on, that's him overcompensating for his ugliness. So Ted's parents, because you had the audacity to procreate and create this kid and not abort. I'm kidding, guys. I'm kidding, by the way. They're the LVP. Okay, so yeah, let's see what you guys are talking. Let's see if you guys think I'm being too hard on him. James Moran says Ted is the first practical Joker who lived. Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit here. Ronnie says, oh, come on, he's fun. He is fun, man, but he just, I don't know. So I'll say this. I will say this about Ted. The fact that I chose Ted's parents as my LVP tells you how strong this movie is. I really had to think. So I really had to think about this. I just watched the movie the other night, and I was looking for an LVP. I've seen this movie a million times, right? And I was trying to think of the worst person in this movie, whether it was a director. It's not Steve Miner. It wasn't the cinematographer, because the cinematography is really good in this. I think it's better in the first one, but there's a lot of good aspects of this. It was hard for me to, find someone that I thought would be, the least valuable person. So I decided to kind of go with a tongue-in-cheek joke. So Ted's parents, they're the LVP. Allie's here. What's up, Allie? Super Tenor says, how you doing, man? Says Friday the 13th, 7's. Sorry, I can't talk tonight. Friday 7's Tina is greater than Halloween 5's Tina. Oh, yeah, man. Absolutely. Halloween movie collector. Hey, what's up, man? Says Ted was smart. Always pays to stay at the bar. Yeah, man. Nothing bad has ever happened to me for staying at after hour places. But yeah, I'm with you. Blake is in the house. What's up, Blake? Says, did Ted close the deal with the bartender? I think we'll talk about that. I am going to talk about that scene in a little bit, so I'll give you my thoughts on that in a moment. All right, let's get to the best scene of this movie, and I got a clip to play here. So let's get this guy off the screen because, YouTube might shut me down for having Ted on the screen too long. But let's get to the best scene. It's the campfire tale, guys, and we're going to watch this for a minute here and just kind of break it down. Let me pull it up here, campfire. All right. What I want to do is I want to watch this clip. You guys know the scene I'm talking about, but I'm going to watch it. I'm going to pause in a few spots and talk about it because this scene tells us all we need to know about Jason and, about this franchise. It's so good. So let's play it here.
I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to give it to you straight up, Jason.
All right, first of all, right off the bat here, a couple of things I love. Number one, it goes right into it. I don't want to scare anyone, but I want to give it to you straight about Jason. And look around. They are making s'mores, I assume, although I don't see any chocolate or graham crackers. They're roasting marshmallows, right? They're roasting marshmallows, okay? They're all around the campfire, and you hear crickets. That tells us we're really in the woods. This isn't some movie set. This was filmed in, I want to say Vermont, actually. I think the first one was filmed in New Jersey. But I really feel like they're in the woods here. And right off the bat, everyone's close. Is there an echo? Is there an echo to that? Let me check. Let me see. Sorry about that.
His body was never recovered from the lake after he drowned. And if you listen to the old timers in town, they'll tell you he's still out there. Some sort of demented creature. Surviving in the wilderness.
I mean, so he's going on about Jason, and the camera's slowly zooming in. This is one of those scenes where, in a movie, I get it. You want to get to the kills, right? We want to get to the kills, okay? But the way the camera's slowly moving in, this is when you're watching, you kind of sit up in your chair a little bit because you want to hear what he's saying. So let's continue because he's going on about, things that we kind of sort of already know. But what he's doing here is he's kind of telling the audience, he's kind of filling in the ridiculousness of the fact that there's a Friday the 13th part 2 and Jason is the killer. He's telling us how. He's kind of showing us, what the filmmakers need us to believe here. Because, Mrs. Voorhees was the killer, right? Jason was dead and drowned. Okay? Let's continue.
Full grown by now. Stalking. Stealing what he needs. Living on wild animals and vegetation.
So he's just kind of explaining, that Jason's out in the woods, How is he out there, He's going on about the legend. I love the way that he mentions, not yet here, but throughout this film, Paul is talking about, how Jason is a legend, right?
Some folks claim they've even seen him right in this area. The girl who survived that night at Camp Blood, that Friday the 13th, she claimed she saw.
I mean, it's so good. It is so good how it's zooming in slowly. You can still hear the crickets the whole time. And Paul's voice is just very, very calm when he's saying this. It's drawing people in, drawing us in as the audience too.
She disappeared 2 months later. Vanished. Blood was everywhere. No one knows what happened to her.
Look, you can see the other characters. Like, look at Vicky, look at Mark, They're looking at Paul because, you know, they've probably heard this legend already. We know Sandra and Jeff, is that her boyfriend's name? We know they've heard all about this because they want to get close to Camp Blood. But Paul is just slowly and calmly talking about this legend of Jason. And right now, I don't want to compare this to, you know, Dr. Loomis's monologue in the OG Halloween because it's not on that level. But for this franchise, as far as this franchise, this is telling us, you know, this is telling us all we need to know about Jason. Yeah, it's really, really good. And Joe said he loves Lauren Marie Taylor's face as this goes along. Yeah, because she's buying in just like they want the audience to buy in.
Legend has it that Jason saw his mother beheaded
Here we
that
go.
night, and he took this revenge. A revenge that he'll continue to seek if anyone ever enters his wilderness again.
There we go. A revenge that he'll continue to seek if anyone ever enters his wilderness ever again. Boom. That is Jason. Okay? That is Jason right there in a nutshell. Now, I'm not going to keep playing this because I don't want to get shut down by YouTube. But that scene right there tells us everything we need to know about Jason, the legend of Jason, and everything we're gonna, you know, continue to see throughout this franchise. Right there in a nutshell, you know, just a calm little campfire talk. And, you know, obviously, as you know, it ends with a scare. I'll fast forward a little bit so we can see Ted looking better here. I don't want to. Blake asks, how old is Paul? I don't know. My guess would be like 27, 29 maybe. But look at it, just keep zooming in. And then here's Ted. Ted with the scare there. He looks a lot better in that mask than he does without it, I'll say that. But that is my best scene of this movie. And it's one of the best scenes of the franchise. And the fact that it doesn't contain Jason, it's just talking about the legend of Jason, you know, just speaks volumes of how effective that scene is. All right, let's see what's going on in the chat. Blake says, good best scene, Nick. Mine is the final chase. Oh, we're going to be talking about that final chase, my friend. Wayne Turner is in the house. What's up, Wayne? Says it's 11:52 in Sydney. The future is bright. You got 8 minutes, man, to tell me what's going on with the stock I bought today. So keep me posted, pal. 0 the 14th says, just like Mrs. Voorhees and Rick Bombay, Paul wears that similar sweater. What is with that franchise and that sweater? Dude, that's a good point. I should have wore a sweater tonight. Damn. I have some ugly sweaters, trust me. All right, we got a super chat here from Ronnie from All the Good Names Are Taken podcast. Make sure you guys go check out their channel, Ronnie and Blake. If you guys watch my channel, I'm sure you know who they are. Thank you for the super chat, buddy. I really appreciate it. Save your money next time, but pal, I'll just read your chat. But thank you, and thank you nevertheless. And he says, campfire scene, best scene in horror history. I'd say no. But as far as monologues go, as far as it's definitely in my top 3 as far as, you know, monologues go. And probably my number 2 right after Donald Pleasance's the Devil's Eyes monologue. I would have to think about that. That's a good topic for a video, kind of best scenes or best monologues in horror history. Yeah, that's a really good topic. I'm gonna have to think about that, but that's a good question. All right, let's get to the worst scene here. Don't worry, it's not a clip. I do have a few clips to play. There's 3 more actually. A couple of them are really short, but it's not going to be all clips because I don't want to bore everyone to death even more than I probably do already. But let's get to the worst scene. It's the Alice intro. Here's why it's the worst scene. Okay. Not only does it go on for fucking ever, you know, it is maybe, I don't know, it's like 10 minutes long. And it's the pre-title sequence, and it's essentially, you know, Alice, it ends with Alice getting killed by what we later learn is Jason, right? But it's essentially a fucking recap of the end of the original, okay? You start out with the movie, and Alice is laying on a bed, and she's just kind of lying there, right? And she's dreaming. She's dreaming, and it's essentially recreating the final moments of her face-off with Mrs. Voorhees in the original. Okay? They're going over those final moments. They're showing clips from it and everything. And then she gets on the phone right here, talking to her mom, takes a shower, and eventually, you get one of your patented early 80s cat jump scares. And then, boom, Jason, ice pick to the temple. Why this is the worst for me is, and it's piggybacking off the campfire thing, is you didn't need, it was unneeded. It was absolutely not necessary. We're retelling the events of the end of the first movie, and we don't need to know that. All we need to know is what Paul told us at the campfire there. That's all we need to know. Nothing else matters. As far as watching this movie, what happened in the first movie, yes, it matters because it's Mrs. Voorhees, and that's why Jason is back, because Alice cut off his mom's head, right? But Paul essentially already told us that. It was just unnecessary, and it dragged on. And just like Joe says in the chat here, Adrienne King ad-libbed this whole thing. She showed up on set. She didn't even know she was going to die. She especially didn't know she was going to die, in the opening scene. And she just went. She ad-libbed. There was no one else on the phone. She was just talking. And she did a great job. But it was absolutely unnecessary. So, see what you guys got going on in the chat. Allie says 2009 had a good campfire scene too. Yeah, it did. It definitely did. It wasn't on par with Paul's stuff, but it was pretty good. And certainly the payoff of the campfire in that movie was absolutely fucking incredible, with the sleeping bag death there. So yeah, I agree, Allie. Roy Lowry says, what up, Nick? You're killing it tonight. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for showing up and watching. Let's see. Blake says, Nick, do you know that's Alice's body at the end in the shack? I did not know that at all. And in fact, when I watched this the other day, I meant to look for that, because I know you mentioned that to me a week ago or so. But I didn't see it there. I'm gonna have to. We're gonna be looking at that clip at the end, so maybe we can go back and see that. Wayne Turner says, I missed Chip Horror Podcast. Bud says the worst scene, Vicky trying to beg Mark with her brown granny panties. Yeah, that's a good scene, man. That's good character building. But I hear you. Wayne says, sadly can't stay. Finally seeing Evil Dead Rise starting soon. Just stop by to say hi and show some support for Nick. Enjoy, everyone. Don't forget to hit the like button on the video. Hey, thanks, Wayne. Enjoy Evil Dead Rise. I got to see that in the next couple of weeks here, for sure. And let's see here. All right. James Rant, says, also, I buy Alice was a little shaken by the whole thing, but she wasn't going crazy like Laurie Strode in 2018. Yeah, I agree. She definitely was shaken by that whole thing. And Mark Mack, hey, what's up, Mark, says, didn't she get hurt with the ice pick? Yeah. The stunt person, I can't remember who the stunt person was, but instead of grabbing the retractable ice pick the first time, he grabbed the real ice pick, and she was screaming, and it was really putting an ice pick into her temple. Pretty crazy there. I was gonna say the 80s were different as far as safety with stunts and stuff like that, but then I remembered Alec fucking Baldwin killed someone like a year ago, or a year and a half ago, so I guess I can't say that. But yeah. Let's see here. Halloween Movie Collector, what's up? Says the whole Alice beginning was not necessary. If you just take it out, doesn't affect anything. It would have been better to find out Jason is the killer later in the film. I agree 100%. Absolutely. All right, let's get to the scariest scene, guys. Let's get Alice off of here. My scariest scene, and we're going to watch this, and it's a pretty quick scene here. But for me, the scariest scene, and there's a lot to choose from in this movie. This movie has a lot of creepy scenes. Nothing 100% stood out for me like the first one when I was going over Marcy's death. But for this movie, I want to talk about Mark's death because it's just a fucking iconic moment. So, let's pull it up here.
Vicky, is that you?
So let's set the stage here. So Mark said, "Vicky, is that you?" And, Vicky was flirting with Mark. And as Bud said, she went to go put on a new outfit, we'll say. And Mark is waiting for her. Vicky is still alive at this moment. And I think Jason has only killed the creepy dude and Terry at this moment, as far as people at the camp. So Mark is here. It is a rainstorm. Everyone else is at the bar, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So let's let's just kind of setting the stage here. And let's go. Going out on the porch and we get some good Harry Mann. But look at the lightning there. That is awesome. I love that you feel like you're in the storm again. You don't feel like you're on a set. At this point, we know something is going to happen. We just don't know what. And we'll get into the believability and, Mark's peripheral vision here in a minute. So then just using the zoom and Harry Manfredini's score. It's just taking its time. Mark is sitting there, why he's looking that direction when Vicky would be coming from the other direction. I don't know, but there's a few other whys with this. But let's continue. I'm gonna pause it for a second so YouTube doesn't shut me down like Ronnie and Blake, who have been shut down twice now. Let's continue. Boom. Look at that. And the longest stairs in the history of, God, any movie. Like, absolutely ridiculous. A few things here that are a little goofy. Number one, the fact that, Mark didn't see Jason standing there. How believable is that? I don't know. I assume he would have some peripheral vision there where he'd see him. And number two, just like an earlier death, it's using the dull side of a machete, which is pretty funny. But either way, a lot of force there. And just the stunt of this guy in this wheelchair going down all those stairs, and his body is still, the wheelchair is still upright there, which is crazy. I don't know how they did that. Obviously, wheelchairs in the early 80s were probably made of like actual metal or steel, and they weren't like maybe like titanium or whatever they would be now, but just a very cool scene. And for me, this is one of the top 5 deaths hands down in the franchise, and this is a franchise that is iconic as far as great kills go. Blake says if this is Scream, he survives that. Yeah, no shit, dude. That might be the best thing I've read all night. Allie says Mark's death is my scariest as well. Yeah, it's a great scene, and it's a lot quicker. It doesn't linger like Marcy from part 1, but it's very effective. And like I said, this movie is just bam, bam, bam. It's just easily probably the best paced movie in this franchise. All right. Let's get into the unsung hero part. For me, the unsung hero is the bar. Okay? So, about, is it halfway through the movie? Maybe a little less than halfway through the movie. Paul says, anyone that wants to go to the bar for the last night out on the town, here's your chance, okay? So he makes Sandra and Jeff stay back because they were caught by the cop wandering into Camp Blood earlier in the day. And man, that scene with the cop is great too, with Cop and Jason. But I digress. So a few others decided to stay back. Like Mark, we saw, we mentioned Vicky. So a few others have stayed back, okay? While everyone else goes to the bar. And the bar is the unsung hero because alcohol and the need to go out has saved countless lives in this situation. Just think about how many people Jason would have killed. Essentially everyone at the campfire. if Paul didn't have them go out. This bar being within a drivable distance saves countless lives. And the fact that Ted asks if there's an after hours place, and there happens to be, also saves countless lives, I assume, because then they didn't come back in the middle of the final chase scene there. So for me, the bar, of all things, is the unsung hero in this movie. James Morant, Paul definitely, he saved Ginny. Yeah, Paul definitely came through at the end. I think Paul Holt's a great character. I think he's an excellent character. Blake says, in the end, what if one of those bears that Paul warned everyone about showed up and attacked Jason instead of Paul? Could you imagine that? I would like to see Jason versus a bear, but probably not the Jason from part 2 versus a bear. I'd like to see, Jason from, part 6 or part 4 versus a bear. But yeah, so this bar ends up saving countless lives, so it's my unsung hero. And in fact, we get a great scene at the bar. In another movie, this would be a throwaway scene, but it's Ginny talking about Jason. And she's essentially talking, and this is another reason why Ginny is the MVP. She's talking about Jason, and she's drinking too. She's talking about Jason, and, she drops a hard R, but different times, right? But she's talking about Jason, and, says, let's put it in real terms. Let's move past the legend. What would he be like? And she's kind of going over this in her head. And because she's going over this in her head while drunk or buzzed, it gives her kind of a plan, or it gives her, it kind of sets the wheels in motion, or it sets the gears in motion in her brain that she remembers later in the movie when she comes into a situation where she can use what she was thinking about earlier. And that wouldn't have been possible without the bar. So for me, the bar always wins, although it usually kicks my ass. But for me, the bar is the unsung hero of this movie. All right. And Joe's right. He says, and Paul and Ted just laugh her off. And she goes, what do you think? And Paul's like, I think you're drunk. And Ted just laughs. You're right. And he's like, Jason's a legend, Ginny. A legend. I just love dialogue like that. I'm not a big, exposition for an exposition guy, but this matters. This is a seemingly normal conversation at a bar about, piggybacking off of the story Paul told. I think it was the night before. Paul told earlier that night or the night before, and it matters in the long run. It wasn't just people bullshitting at a bar, and I like that. For a movie that, like I said, has this fast pace, moments like this, every moment like this, it matters in this movie. It's not just some bullshit that we get in some of the later sequels. These minor conversations, or seemingly minor conversations at a bar, not even at the camp, matter. And that's another reason why this movie is one of the best of the franchise. Roy Lowry says, Nick, what do you believe happens to Paul? Well, that's a good question. I think Paul survived. I think the end with Muffin and all that shit was a dream. And I think you can kind of confirm that, based on the news report from the beginning of part 3, which was done by Steve Miner, actually. So yeah, I think Paul survives. I'd like to think the end of that is just kind of a dream. But good question. Shape of Horror Podcast says, unsung hero, Jason, for murdering Vicky and saving Mark from seeing the brown granny panties. Yeah, that you're not wrong there, pal. Allie says Paul is her unsung hero. There's a very good case to be made for that, Allie. Because Paul gets kind of lost in the shuffle here because, everybody talks about Ginny. I've been, talking about Ginny all night here, essentially. And I was planning on doing that even before I found out it was Amy Steele's birthday. But Paul, not only does he survive, he's smart. He shows up again at the end, which we're going to see here momentarily. And like I said, Paul's a great character. If I could hang out with anyone in the Friday franchise, Paul would be near the top of that list. Blake agrees. He says, my Paul, I give it all. No keys. A little Halloween there. All right, let's get to the funniest moment. Don't worry, it's not a clip. Let's get this bar stuff off of here. For me, the funniest moment is this. Beware of bears. All right, I'm going to set this up here. Okay. So, this is kind of a subtle, funny moment. For me, at least. Earlier, like I said, when Ginny arrives earlier when Paul is kind of giving his spiel to all the counselors. He's like, hey, I remember you. I remember you. We worked here. I'm sure I'll get to know all of you. And he's going over about bears and how bears are, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he essentially says, and women, make sure you keep clean during your menstrual cycle. And he kind of puts his head down because he's ashamed to say it. You know, something that a man would not say, a boss would not say now, right? At all. Cut to a few minutes later, or I think later that night, right? Okay, later that night, Ginny and Paul are kind of making out in her cabin, okay? And this is right when Crazy Ralph dies, right? Crazy Ralph is kind of watching. You're supposed to think it's Jason watching, and it cuts up, and it's Crazy Ralph. And then he gets barbed wire across his neck. And then it kind of cuts to the next day. So the last thing we saw of Ginny and Paul was them kind of making out. And all of a sudden she wakes up by herself, and Paul had wrote, "Beware of bears" on her mirror, insinuating that either they hooked up and Paul found out that way, or they didn't because Ginny's having her on her menstrual cycle, like Paul mentioned earlier. So it's just kind of like a subtle little thing, something that would never happen today. But I just thought it was some subtle humor there in a movie that has no wasted moments. It just took a moment to to make me laugh, at least. So yeah, let's see what you guys got here. Ronnie says Paul goes one-on-one with Jason and lives, we think. Yes he does. I think he lives. And it looks like James Moran agrees. He says, thank you, Nick. I think Paul lived as well, and it was a dream when Jason comes through the window. James has Ted pranking Jeff and his girlfriend. Yeah, Ted has their truck kind of towed at the beginning when Ralph is by the phone booth with Jeff and Sandra. All of a sudden their truck gets towed, and you find out it's Ted pulling a prank on them. All right. Ronnie says, has to be a dream when Jason comes through the window. They show us he's hurt at the beginning of part 3. Yeah, that's right, because he's like crawling off, right? Or crawling away, kind of. So yeah, you're right there. Ronnie says there was a second one, so as far as the 2 options I gave about the Beware of Bears. Mark says, plus Jason's face is different in part 3, so it was a dream. Yeah, Jason's face, the continuity of Jason's face is something that, is never the same in this franchise, and especially from 2 to 3. Are 2 completely different Jasons. He had different traps in part 3 as well. Roy says, I think Paul got blue-balled that night. I agree. And Jesus, Joe says Paul was all up inside Ginny's robe. Yes, he was. She was his MVP too. All right, let's get to the dumbest moment. Got a little clip here. It's not a long one, but the dumbest moment for me is clumsy Jason. Okay, so as we know, Jason in this movie is different than the Jason that we got to know throughout the franchise, even without the hockey mask. This is an inexperienced Jason. It is a Jason that, as far as we know, has just started out killing. He's skinnier. He's not built like Ted, but he's a skinnier guy, and he's got a lot of clumsy moments in this. And I want to watch a moment here, a quick scene where he's pretty clumsy, and I'll set the scene here too. This is during the final chase scene. Great fucking final chase scene, by the way. But during the final chase scene, Ginny is hiding under a bed, and Jason's walking around a cabin, and this is the scene where Ginny pees herself. Yep, the MVP of this movie, in my opinion, pees herself because she's that scared. And that's another thing I like about Ginny. That is very real. I know there's the rat there, and people have mentioned maybe it's the rat piss, but I want to say Amy Steele confirmed, or somebody confirmed, that is supposed to be Ginny peeing herself. And that's a very real thing to do in that situation. She can't get away from this guy. She's went from the main cabin to another cabin to, her car, and Jason's still after her. But she's hiding under the bed. Let's play the clip here, and you'll see there's a couple clumsy moments in here from Jason. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. So she's under the bed. And the fucking chair breaks. Like, okay, so that's I'm okay with that. It looks a little dumb from my point of view, but let's continue because there's another part here. She gets up, goes in the closet. Look at him, kind of trying to get his like balance and stuff. Like it's not the Jason that we came to know as an indestructible killing machine. But there's a lot of charm in seeing this Jason, too. It doesn't make this a bad movie. It doesn't make this a bad Jason. It's just different. But for me, in this scene here, he's just pretty clumsy. And here's the worst part of it here in a second when Ginny grabs this chainsaw. I want you to look at Jason's reaction to her coming at him with a chainsaw. Look at right there. Look at him. He's like backing up. Now, that's exactly how I would react if someone was coming at me with a chainsaw. So, as James said, there is a lot of realism in this Jason, but it just looks a little goofy here to have our villain kind of looking like this. It just comes at him and he kind of topples over. So for me, that's kind of the dumbest moment for me. I don't think it's dumb, like where it's not believable, because like I said, it is very believable. But they made our villain a little bit too. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it except for, I just think it's a little dumb how they shouldn't have shown him so vulnerable. Is kind of what I'm trying to say. It's a problem with doing these live. I'm trying to think of a word, and I can't think of the word. But you guys know what I mean. So yeah, let's get to the chat. Then we're going to get to the best Jason moment and rate this bitch. And wish Amy Steele a happy birthday and get out of here. I'm kissing Amy Steele's ass tonight. Maybe she'll be on my channel. I'm kidding. She will not. There's no way she'd want to be on. But let's see what's going on in the chat. Okay. Roy says it did get confirmed, Nick. There was Ginny pissing herself. Okay, that's what I thought. Sorry here. I'm losing my place in the chat. Joe says, I think, but you did verify that they used Coke for the pee. Yes, I do, I do remember that. Joe says her birthday's the 3rd? What the hell? I've been wishing her happy birthday all night. I am the moron. Maybe I'm the dumbest. The dumbest moment is me wishing her a happy birthday. I thought I read that it was her birthday. I think Fright Rags came out with something today for her birthday, but maybe it was like for her birthday week or something like that. So yeah, maybe. Mark says, how did Jason find Alice? Yeah, that's another story. He walked to some city apparently. That's a whole nother leap of logic. But we're also in a movie where, the movie prior, Jason drowned as a boy, and now all of a sudden he's alive. So I get it. But yeah, it is a little bit ridiculous that he found Alice like that. I agree. Allie says, pissing yourself because of a rat would be stupid when you have a sack head chasing you. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Mark Max says, looks like Michael and Ends. Yeah, dude, yeah. It's like Corey Cunningham coming after him. Shape of Horror podcast. Bud is fixated on Vicky's attire. He is just fixated on it. Blake says, Bud, what did she spray on that monkey? Brute cologne? Oh, God. I'm not touching this, guys. And Joe says he found Jason while Michael learned to drive. Yeah, no kidding. All right, so we're going to set the stage here for the best Jason moment. For me, the best Jason moment, if I can find my answer here, is the climax of the movie. There's a lot of good Jason moments in this movie, guys. But we're talking about the climax of the movie, and I'm going to set the stage again, and then we're going to play a clip here and talk about it. So, climax of the movie, it's basically after what we just saw. Okay? So, what we just saw was essentially maybe halfway through the final chase with Ginny and Jason, which goes on a while. Paul has been knocked out apparently by Jason when, there's someone in this fucking room. And Ginny's running around, and we get to her running further down into the woods, and she comes across this shack, which we saw earlier in the movie in another great scene. This was a daytime scene. That was essentially where the cop, which they later named after the movie, Deputy Winslow, I believe. But the cop is driving his cop car down the road, and it's one of those skinny country highways with woods on both sides, and you just see Jason dart past the road, and it's like the daytime, and it's creepy as hell. And the cop gets out of his car and starts chasing Jason, and it's a long kind of chase scene, and essentially he ends up at this shack here, okay? And he sees a toilet, and he opens the door to a room and goes, oh my god, and then boom, gets a hammer to the back of the head and makes a crazy face, okay? Well, Ginny all of a sudden is running, and she sees this shack, and we know this is at this point we know this is Jason's lair, okay? But she's like, oh, somebody help me, look at this thing. It's like this is incredible, and very believable for someone that's a slow kid that was growing up in the woods kind of by himself, is what we're supposed to believe. He either built this, or this was kind of there and falling apart, and he put it together based on just bullshit things he could find throughout the woods. Very creepy and very believable. So she gets there, and she sees Jason after her. There's a great scene where through the window, when Ginny's in there looking around, all of a sudden in the background you see through the window, you see Jason running up, and it's incredible. And Ginny screams and goes into a room, kind of locks herself in the room, and she turns around, and what does she see? She sees Pamela Voorhees' head and sweater and the bodies of some of her friends. Okay? Holy shit, Jason grabbed his mother's head and sweater and kept it there as some type of shrine. Okay? So let's watch this scene here as Jason shows up. So, here we go. And I forgot to mention, Ginny puts on the sweater in some quick thinking. She puts on the sweater, and she's going to pretend to be Mrs. Voorhees.
Jason's mother is talking to you!
Look at that. So she's got the sweater. She's kind of hiding Mrs. Voorhees' head, and she's using that child psychology. This goes back to the scene I mentioned earlier. It harps on the things she mentioned in the bar. And we're seeing Jason, tilt his head. It's like when my dog is trying to understand what I'm trying to tell him. He tilts his head because he's confused. Jason, as we know, he wasn't a very good swimmer, which was code for, he was a little slow, is what they'd say back in the day. So he's trying to work this out in his head because he knows his mom's dead, but I don't know. He's a little confused here.
Jason, Mother is talking to you.
Come on. That's my boy.
Come, kneel down.
I love that they got Betsy Palmer back for this. I don't know what they paid her or anything, but from what I heard, they kind of just filmed this, just went to her house and put a black screen behind her and had her do this, which is pretty cool. That she did it. It's kind of cutting back and forth, and I love kind of the score that Harry Manfredini uses here. It's really well done.
That's the boy.
Just got that pickaxe, which is awesome. Just telling him to kneel down, wearing that sweater. Look at, just once again, the throwaway line at the beginning when Paul's trying to fix Ginny's car. He's like, use some of that child psychology you're majoring in. Just a throwaway line, but it's not a throwaway line. Like I said earlier, it matters in this movie, which is absolutely incredible that a line like that comes into the focus in the climax of the movie.
That's my good boy.
He's kneeling, you can only see with that one eye.
That's a good boy. Good Jason.
Look at, she's got him right where she wants him. Allie mentioned that they stole this look essentially from the town that dreaded sundown. Yeah, they absolutely did. They did steal that look for certain. Okay, let's continue. Let's see, Ginny end Jason, or does she? She made a mistake. Jason's got better peripheral vision with that sack on than Mark did, because he sees his mother's head right there, and it causes him to lock. Look who shows up. Allie's unsung hero, Paul Holt. How did Paul get here? That's the question. I don't know. What I like to rationalize is that when we see Jason running up, I say Ginny screams. I think maybe Paul heard that scream when he was trying to find her anyway, and he comes to the rescue. Look at this. As Blake said earlier, or Ronnie said earlier, taking on Jason one-on-one here. I love, this is a fair fight. This is an absolutely fair fight. Jason's obviously stronger than Paul, but Paul's holding his own here. And I love that the place is collapsing around him. It shows how just how put together it is. Look at that. There's shit falling from the ceiling, all kinds of things, and Jason gets the upper hand again. We get Manfredini's score kicking in as Ginny picks up the machete, trying to take him out just like his mom was taken out. Same thing. What happens if Ginny doesn't do this? Does Paul get a pickaxe right to the fucking face? Man. This franchise loves slow motion machete chops to the killer. But I like Amy Steele's face here. Look how deep that is. When I first saw this, I just thought she kind of cut him there. That is fucking deep. That is really deep. I love the way, I love the music there, and he just kind of falls, still holding the pickaxe. That is a great scene. And what I like about this scene, I mean, there's a lot of things I like about this scene, but this is so unique in the franchise. After this, we're never ever gonna see a Jason like this again. There are some movies that go back to tricking him like that, specifically Part 4 with Corey Feldman, a little bit, not as detailed or deep as this, but this goes back to who Jason is. This goes back to the things that Ginny said, and this goes back to Paul's campfire speech, and it's just a great scene that we'll never kind of get to relive a scene like this, because whether it's a sequel, whether it's some type of reimagining, I don't think we'll get a skinny Jason like this. And as much as we might prefer hockey mask wearing Jason with big traps and shit like that, there's a certain charm to this movie because of this Jason, and Ginny's child psychology way to defeat him with an assist from Paul Holt is a big part of that. But let's see what you guys are talking about in the chat as I was rambling on during that scene. Oh man. Shape of Horror Podcast says, I'm 100% convinced that Steve Miner ripped both both of Jason off from Town That Dreaded Sundown. Yeah, I think he did too. There's also a death that I didn't talk about earlier with Jeff and Sandra, where they are, having sex, and Jason walks in and puts a spear through both of them, cut massively by the MPAA. But that was basically stolen from, is it Bay of Blood, or it's either called Bay of Blood or Twitch of the Death Nerve, which is an awesome fucking name for a movie, by the way. But that was pretty much ripped off, or blatantly ripped off, depending on your opinion as well. Let's see what else is going on in the chat. I'm going to scroll up here. Ronnie says maybe all these horror icons are dumb. Yeah, well, yeah. You're probably right on that, my friend. Talking about Mark being paralyzed. Paul is a tracker. Yeah, he is. Joe says Paul is a counselor. He might have tracking knowledge. Blake says, damn roof and floor caving in like my house. Yeah, Blake, I assume. You guys put up a quick cut and you miss it clip of my house on your P45 video that looked pretty shitty, just like this hut of Jason. So I hear ya. Let's see. Joe says, I really wish they made the early version of Part 3 script where Ginny was in college and found Paul's head in the dryer when they were doing laundry. Yeah, I heard about that. Amy Steele obviously says she regrets not coming back. Roy says, put him in the full Nelson, Paul. Damn it. And James brings up a good point. Yeah, Steve Dash got the tip of his finger cut off. Yeah, Amy Steele missed and hit Dash's finger. And they had to take Dash to the ER, and he had the prop machete inside of him, inside of his shoulder when they went to the ER, and they let him in right away because they thought the machete was the actual issue, which is pretty funny. James says if it was Part 3, Jason, Paul wouldn't have stood a chance. Nope, his eyes would have been flying out of his head for sure. All right. Let's see. We're going to rate this in a second. I just want to see if there's anyone I missed here. Halloween Movie Collector says the best part of that scene is his eye moving. Oh, when he's kind of falling over. Yeah, it is. That is pretty good. I agree with you. And Allie says there is just scary as hell. Someone wearing a mask on their head. The Strangers was another one. Yep, I absolutely agree. All right, I'm going to rate this. I'm rating on a scale of 1 to 10. Essentially, guys, let me tell you my plan here before I rate this. When I get done with all these Friday movies, I am going to either make a video or probably do a live stream. But I'm gonna basically rate all of these criteria from best to worst and go through them. So like my MVPs from each movie, I'm gonna rate them all. I'm gonna use some of my Microsoft Excel knowledge and make some charts to kind of show where each movie is in the franchise based on my own personal rankings and based on these criteria. So that's kind of my plan. So I'm ranking these movies on a scale of 1 to 10. Not really any criteria in my ranking except my own personal enjoyment of this movie combined with how good I actually think the movie is. For me, this one's one of the top ones in the franchise. Easily, I give this movie, let me find my answer here. I give this movie a 9.2 out of 10. It doesn't get much better than this in this franchise as far as I'm concerned. When I watched the original Friday the 13th last week and talked about that, I thought that movie it aged very well for me. I know people hate it because Jason's not the killer. I know there's a lot of issues with that movie, but I really enjoyed my rewatch of Friday the 13th, 1980. As far as my rewatch of Friday the 13th Part 2, I enjoyed this just as much as I always have. I've always loved this movie. It can get a bad rap for Jason being Sackhead Jason. It can also get overrated a little bit for Jason being Sackhead Jason because people just want to rate things that are different a little higher. For me, though, I love it because of the characters. I love it because we get a unique Jason. I love it because it has great kills. That's kind of what I look for in my Friday the 13th movies. The story is a similar story as we talked about earlier. The way these movies differ is the characters and, little kind of tweaks to the setting and things like this. And as far as characters go, this is one of the best in the franchise for me. It's probably, I'm going to do a ranking video at some point. I've done it in the past, but my old ranking before these rewatches was always part 4, then part 2. Part 2 is my second favorite in the franchise. It's going to be tough to beat this movie. We'll see how the next few do. But for me, I'm giving it a 9.2 out of 10. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Blake gives it a 5 out of 5. We'll watch again. I want to say, Blake, this might be your favorite of the franchise, if I recall from one of your earlier videos. James Morant says 9 out of 10, one of the best sequels. Absolutely agree. Allie gives it an 8 out of 10. Roy says 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all tied in my mind for the best Fridays, straight 10s. Yeah, I'm of the same mind where the first 4 Fridays for me are what I like most. I know people love 6, and I like 6, but for me, I prefer the tone of the first 4 movies. This is essentially, what's his face? Frank Mancuso Jr.'s kind of for some of movies, so that's why you kind of see a similar tone to them. But for me, I love the first 4 movies as well. Halloween Movie Collector says, my favorite of the franchise, gives it a 9. Make sure you guys go check out the Halloween Movie Collector. Pat has a great channel. Obviously talks a lot about Halloween, talks a lot of obscure horror. They do a lot of great things on that channel. It's Pat, Brett, and I can't remember the other guy's name. I apologize. But they seriously do a lot of good stuff. So I would highly encourage any horror fans that are either in the chat right now or watching this after the fact to go sub to the Halloween Movie Collector. Not only, like I said, do they talk a lot about good horror movies, including Halloween and stuff like that, but true to their name, they got a lot of great memorabilia that they like to show off. Not show off in a bragging way, but show off in like a fun, look what I found way. So I'd highly encourage you guys to go check out that channel. Joe says this is probably my second favorite after 6, at least as far as Friday movies go. Easy 9 out of 10. Yep, I'm with you as far as this movie being very good. Real quick, guys. Tomorrow night over on Bud's channel, The Shape of Horror podcast, Bud and I are having our second episode of our new show, Take It to the Grave. We talked about the David Gordon Green trilogy, the best moments of that trilogy last week. Tomorrow we are talking the worst moments of the trilogy. And I know that'll get a little more popular than the first one, because one thing I've learned about YouTube, one thing I've learned about the internet, is people would rather talk about shit they hate than shit they like. It's unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. But there's a lot to talk about with the David Gordon Green trilogy, so we're going to be doing that on Bud's channel tomorrow night. So make sure you guys go sub and check out the Shape of Horror podcast. As far as me, other than that, I am, Allie, if you're still in the chat, I know I have a video that I'm working on for you. It'll be out later this week, member video. So thank you for that. You'll see which choice I chose shortly. Other than that, next week, Monday, guys, I'm going to be doing Friday the 13th, part 3, 3D. Don't worry, you're not going to have my ugly grill coming at you in 3D, I don't think. But that's it for me tonight, guys. I appreciate the lively chat. I appreciate you guys showing up. Don't forget, like I said, to tune into Bud's channel tomorrow night to talk some Halloween, because that's always fun. I know my viewers love talking Halloween. I'm enjoying this Friday the 13th franchise kind of retrospective right now, and I'm excited to watch Friday the 13th part 3 next week, because that is the first Friday the 13th movie I have ever seen. And I got a lot of nostalgia with it, and we'll get into it. Richard Brooker's my favorite Jason for many, many fucking reasons. I can't wait to break down why, and talk about a few scenes and show a few clips from that movie. But that's it for me tonight, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday and a great rest of your week. I'll see you tomorrow over on the Shape of Horror podcast.